I'm about to bust. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the bathroom. Oh, good lord.
He ruins my schemes.
Time for something completely different, I tell you what. I know this isn't a Sonic video, but sometimes you just get confronted with something that makes you think, I've got to talk about this. So, I've been on a month-long binge of King of the Hill. I utterly adore this show. I hadn't seen it for so many years, and rewatching it as an adult and fully understanding it, it's pretty amazing. The folks of Arlen, Texas really do feel like a warm embrace, even with how dysfunctional they are half the time. But that's part of their charm. And the show was recently revived for a time-skipping 14th season, which I have also watched and loved. The Hills are wonderful, with Hank and his love of propane, Peggy and her high ego and equally high ignorance, Bobby and his general ridiculousness, and of course, Luann and her kind yet clueless nature that gets her into so many scrapes. And guess who's the focus of today's escapade? Welcome to Season 7, Episode 9, Pigmalion. The title, and the plot, is naturally a play on the various versions of Pigmalion, the Greek myth about a man who created and fell in love with a sculpture he crafted of the perfect woman. And the play by George Bernard Shaw about a professor taking in a Cockney flower girl and trying to make a lady out of her, but ends up falling in love with her. You may also know the latter as the musical My Fair Lady, which is how I was introduced to the concept. King of the Hill's version involves a wealthy CEO, Trip Larson, taking in a newly unemployed college student, Luann, and trying to make a mascot lady out of her, while having supposedly fallen in love with her. On paper, that already sounds a bit dodgy, and when I watched it, I was fully unprepared for this to be one of the darkest, if not the darkest King of the Hill episode I've seen to date. It takes the Pygmalion kind of plot and takes it to a kind of dark and messed up place, being the closest that King of the Hill has ever gotten to doing a horror episode. In fact, it was an episode so dark that it was held over from Season 5, and it's a Halloween special airing in January. Halloween in January. Told Mr. Peanut Butter would be proud. There are so many things about this episode which are unhinged, so let's start from the top. Peggy's possessive parenting of Luann for one thing. Luann messes up at her waitress job badly, but not badly enough to get fired. Unfortunately, Peggy steps in and makes that decision for her, quitting on her behalf, without Luann's consent. Immediately, it says a lot about Peggy's character and how she believes she always knows the best for everyone, even when it's disruptive. I fully subscribe to the Peggy got brain damage after her skydiving accident theory too, as her ego really rose exponentially after that incident, so it's interesting to see the chaos that she brings in her protective wake, though I don't doubt for a single second that she actually does mean well for Luann, especially in the absence and negligence of her actual mother Leanne. Peggy got her out of the job to get her to look for new opportunities and continue to mold Leanne into a little version of her, much to Luann's dismay.
It would be really nice if sometimes you could ask me when you make decisions about my life.
Over the course of the series, Luann has been something of a lost soul at times. She desperately wanted to be in beauty school despite being absolutely terrible at it, and it took a sequence of events beginning with the death of her boyfriend Buckley to make her reconsider her life path. And now she's in college, somewhere where she is actually doing her best to make things work. You really want to see Luann succeed. She comes across as a delightful, if sometimes spiteful and naive, girl. Peggy takes Luann to a talk about entrepreneurship, led by Trip Larson, CEO of Larson's Pork Products. Whew boy, Trip is an interesting kind of guy. He's one of the most out-there characters in King of the Hill, and just so happens to be voiced by Michael Keaton, a casting choice that was inspired and paid off in dividends. Like, I'm up to this series in my rewatch, and so far in terms of antagonists, Trip is the most messed up one by far. He's a very odd and complex villain for a show that rarely has actual villains, and has more of an antagonist of the week kind of vibe. So during his little lecture, having taken one look at Leanne and feeling love at first sight, Trip offers her a job interview at his place, which is, well, it's certainly something. Luann goes along to the interview, and Peggy gets palmed off with Trip's autobiography which she hate reads, while Trip's manipulation goes up to the next level. He reveals what he really thinks of Leanne, but also frames it as a positive.
You know so much and I know so little. I hope that doesn't make you think I'm stupid.
You are not stupid. You're ignorant. It's a compliment. That just means you haven't had the chance to learn all the wrong things.
And the manipulated Luann ends up kissing Trip, much to Peggy's horror. Tripp's insistence that Luann is ignorant and not stupid in itself begins to rob Leanne of the agency that she is struggling to maintain for herself, effectively framing her as someone who doesn't know any better, so good old Tripp is here to save her and make it all right. Tripp represents a positive male figure and a sense of stability that she never really had for a while, and that is including Uncle Hank, because their relationship was definitely rocky at times. It doesn't take long for the first signs of Tripp's control to begin showing. It begins very subtly with Luann coming home with braids because Tripp likes them. Luann is someone who takes a shed load of pride in her hair. I mean, the shock of losing it in an explosion once radicalized her into a Sinead O'Connor duplicate, so we know how precious it is to her, and this is going to become even more important later. Hank and Peggy go to meet with Tripp and get the real lay of the land with him, with Peggy immediately establishing the power play by referring to Leanne as my Leanne. Very slick, Peg. But Tripp immediately lays on the charm with Hank, showing him with football bloopers and the sight of, oh god, there it is, the J5. The J5 is the next inclination we get of the plan, as it were. It is a massively engorged pig that is being personally modified by Tripp for its meat, or so he says, that is struggling to stand under its own weight, and yet, it's the perfect pig. Tripp has no regard for this living creature's sentience, but we know why. We'll get into that later. But Hank looks upon the thing practically drooling. Like, Hank man, get some standards. To put the cherry on top, Tripp mentions Sweet Lady Propane. In response to Peggy's power play, he puts Hank into a propane-powered hot air balloon and makes an example of him, threatening his life to show Peggy not to mess with him. The episode started off showing how Peggy was controlling Luann's life, but now as we've entered the second stage, with Tripp now wresting control away from Peggy, she continues to lose her influence. We see this in the following scene where Peggy is desperately trying to convince Hank that Tripp threatened his life, despite Hank telling her that she no doubt distracted him, where Luann chimes in giving her lip about run-on sentences, much to Peggy's anger. My favourite detail of this scene is how Luann literally turns her nose up at Peggy. It's so extra, but such a nice detail in Luann's metamorphosis into Tripp's girl. Tripp's next power play occurs when he literally has a headless pig left on the porch of the hills, addressed to Peggy, almost in a reverse of the horse head from The Godfather. She takes it as a threat, which is probably correct, whereas Hank takes it as a gift, going to show just how different both their interpretations of Tripp are, with Peggy focusing on the negative and cynicism, while Hank focuses on the positive and the friendly. Peggy loses it and demands Luann breaks up with Tripp, to which Luann perceives this as yet another attempt by Peggy to micromanage her life, and tells her that she is
I am a proud, ignorant woman.
Now that is the stupidest thing I ever heard anyone say.
to which Luann breaks down. It's clever writing to continue this debate of ignorance versus stupidity, showing the difference between Peggy and Tripp's approaches. Peggy, effectively being the voice of reason for once, is right on the money in calling it stupid, but Luann loves to live in the bubble of plausible deniability, ignorance. From here, we enter the third stage, with Peggy having alienated Luann further and Tripp asserting full control over her. We continually see Tripp's mask drop and reform more and more often the more time we spend with him, with him responding negatively to Luann wiping her eyes on his tie, before then choosing to comfort her. Just as Luann tells Tripp she's ready to go home, he drops a bombshell on her. She is home. He's had all her belongings moved into his mansion. Now she really is on a dark path, and Tripp is leading her down it. I really enjoy the symbolism here as the scene pans over to the pigs being led into the slaughterhouse. That's a really clever bit of writing and animation work, and it gives you such a chill. From here on, the episode starts to lead way more to its horror aspects, almost akin to Stephen King's Misery at points. Luann learns that Tripp had all of her clothes shredded and replaced with multiple replicas of the same dress, and we see more of the mask slip. This dress means something to him.
Everything has a small flaw or imperfection. Drives me mad.
This is the point where Luann really begins to see just what she's gotten herself into. Later that night, Luann hears constant banging from behind a door in the hallway. She investigates it, and it turns out to be the J5. It attacks her in a rage. Tripp arrives to save her and subdues the J5, putting it back into his darkened room. Wait, the pig has a room? He deflects Luann's very valid question about why he has a pig in the house by answering it from the angle of because he was equipped for it, rambling about the floor of the room. He is so desensitized to having a pig in the house that he takes it so matter-of-factly. or he doesn't take Luann seriously enough to deem her worthy of the actual answer to the question. And then comes another turn moment, as he tells Luann to go back to bed, and he will have a glass of warm milk delivered to her.
Finish it all.
It doesn't take a genius to work out that, yeah, that milk is going to contain sleeping drugs. As such, she wakes up having slept for 14 hours to a horrifying sight. Her hair is now red. Luann is a blonde girlie, she is not a red girlie, and this change was done by Trip, who not only did it without her consent, but did it while she was under the influence of sleeping pills. With Luann's complaint, Trip tells her that they can shave it off and wait for it to regrow, which triggers an alarmed response from Luann, a trauma response perhaps, no doubt remembering the last time she lost all of her hair in the Megalomart explosion. It's an odd coincidence, but as controlling as Trip is, it wouldn't surprise me if he became aware of that too, another weapon to add to the bow. Luann was a survivor of the explosion, so it's clear that she would probably have garnered some media attention. On a quest for answers, Luann finally goes to investigate Trip's private study, and comes across the source of his delusions, a magazine encased in a display set to a certain page. An advert for Larsen's pork products that has 3 characters: a man in lederhosen, a morbidly obese pig who looks startlingly like J5, and a red-headed girl wearing the same clothes that Luann is wearing. Oh my god, he's turned her into a cosplayer. Here we see Trip's true tendencies coming into play, as his first remark when Luann finds out is about altering her teeth. While looking upon the work created by his grandfather 50 years ago, Trip reveals that his mother was quite negligent, but the one thing he consistently had around him was the thought of this family that resembled 3 characters, and it's something that very much informed his implied schizophrenia. He has been chasing this dream ever since, and this all comes to a head at the Halloween party that Trip organises to show everyone just how happy they are together. And now it becomes all quite terrifyingly clear to Luann. Trip approaches her dressed entirely like a pig, and he startlingly proposes to her, but not out of love between him and her, but love between her and the lederhosen man from the advert. As it turns out, he has been preparing for this. He sought out Javier to be the man, he sought out Luann to be the girl, but now he has decided to become the pig, or Pigman 03. And it's pretty clear that this Halloween party would be where they were all to be put onto display, causing reputational destruction for everyone involved.
Life is a series of compromises.
Trip's mental state throughout the episode has declined rapidly. He was fairly well put together at the beginning, but things were always brewing underneath the surface. However, his turn in putting on the pig outfit marks the point in which he's outright too far gone. I 100% believe that he was originally supposed to be J5 as the pig in this hypothetical little family. I mean, just look at the pig in the advert, and then look at the J5. It's Trip's personal project, and as such, it looks like the advert's pig. He kept him in the house for reasons that I'm not even going to pretend to be able to work out. Either way, somewhere down the line, Trip went from creating the perfect pig to becoming what he considered to be the perfect pig. Luann escapes and runs into the slaughterhouse factory to hide from Trip, with Peggy in pursuit of both of them. From then on, it really does become a battle for Luann's independence as she runs away from the 2 people who have tried to control her. Trip wanted to take hold of her life for his own selfish desires, and Peggy wanted to take hold of her life for her own, selfish desires, but coming from a better place of parental obsession, not mental illness, or debatably, probably. Oh. Peggy displays yet another of her tendencies to screw up things she doesn't understand when she starts messing with the conveyor belt that Trip and Luann are fighting on, making it go faster, much like the decline of Trip's mental state, now intending to have Luann and him both become sausages. Yep, he is intending for them to both commit suicide to become one with his own produce. His entire brain has gone from wanting Luann to cosplay a girl in an advert to forming an on-the-spot death pact with her. Fortunately, Luann manages to escape, and Trip instead tells Peggy to pull down the left lever. You'd expect this to stop the machine, but no. This actually triggers a bolt piston. He laughs, accepting his fate, believing that he is about to be taken home to his mother and father very soon, until he passes through the electric shock. Yeah, this bit I find to be absolutely tragic.
The voices have left my head. What am I doing in a pig costume?
His implied schizophrenia is somehow gone and cured, and what remains is Trip's headspace from perhaps before all this began to take over his life, from before he met Luann, before he made the J5, before his obsession took hold. The man who loved his family business woke up to find himself lying on a conveyor belt in a pig costume, with no memory of what had just occurred. Shortly before, the bolt piston impales him in the head off-screen, killing him and sending his body off to begin the process of becoming a Larson's meat product, in what is probably one of the most horrifying endings to a King of the Hill episode pretty much ever. It is rough and it's depressing too. He got a few moments of clear thinking before we lost it all. Whilst from one perspective, Trip's fate was pretty much sealed from the moment he chose to become the pig. And don't get me wrong, it's almost fitting that he led himself to his own slaughter. But the truth is, he was killed by Peggy Hill. She won the battle for custody over Leanne by taking him off the board by total accident. If she hadn't taken such a possessive amount of control over Luann's life, she wouldn't have ended up with Trip. She'd still be working at the restaurant, and Trip would still be alive. Obviously, Peggy Hill is not a murderer. It's not directly her fault that Trip is dead, but indirectly, yes it is, through a freak accident. Although it's possible that in killing him, she spared another girl the same fate of becoming his little mascot puppet, or even worse, someone who wouldn't have had a Peggy Hill to save her. The ending is very curious. Luann quickly recedes back into her religious side to cope with what has just happened. She has had a hell of a traumatic ordeal, so I can understand her more somber reaction, but this scene can be read in multiple ways. Yes, they are underplaying that someone just died, but Luann is really in a vulnerable state, and feeding her ego to make her happy is the only thing Peggy could really have done to salvage something of the situation, using her own control over Luann's thought process to give her some comfort and closure to the whole miserable affair, telling her that she has won her independence after this. And whilst we have seen many times that Peggy rarely acknowledges when she messes things up, I mean just think back to when she accidentally kidnapped a Mexican child for one, I think here she absolutely knows that she completely screwed up on this one, to the point of nearly getting Luann killed through her micromanaging. It would have been interesting to see more of an aftermath to this episode. Obviously there was not enough time for that, but just seeing things like the police investigation or what became of Trip's corpse, it makes you think. Like, production of the meat would probably pause until whoever was under Trip took over, but with that in mind, if he was to become sausage, they would probably have to recall all Larson's pork products to prevent people from accidentally becoming cannibals if it made it that far in the production line, and of course, the whole loads already in the machine would be contaminated anyway. There would have to be a full expose on the innards of Trip's house, as he was a notable businessman. What the hell are the cops going to think when they find the J5, the magazine, Luann's dresses? There are so many things to think about here. And there are, of course, surely going to be ramifications for Luann and Peggy, especially Luann. As far as Javier and Blanca are concerned, the last person they saw Trip with before he went missing and died was Luann, though the police would end up naming her as a suspect, surely. There was an urban legend about this episode's first airing, in that you were originally able to see Larson's corpse in the background as the episode ended, but that has been revealed to be totally false, and frankly, probably for the best. It's best to just imagine it circulating somewhere or got stuck in a machine because, yeah, the alternative is quite grim. Overall, Pigmalion is a fascinating episode that really puts Luann's battle to be an independent woman at the forefront as she wrestles control from the two people who want it over her. I enjoyed it a lot, and it's a very interesting genre shift for King of the Hill. It's not one that always works, but I hugely respect the effort put into it, and there is so much to analyse about it. Tell me what your thoughts on Pigmalion are, and tell me if you enjoyed this video. I'd love to do more King of the Hill or animated stuff in general, really, so do let me know. And until next time, see ya!